Following Liz Truss's resignation after just 44 days in office, there's been a lot of noise about her being entitled to £115,000 per year for life. This was a headline in the Evening Standard. Did Liz Truss serve long enough as PM to receive the £115k a year payout for the rest of her life? Here's one from The Telegraph. Liz Truss facing calls to decline the £115,000 a year allowance as a former PM. Keir Starmer was also asked what he thought about Truss getting the allowance.
The Lib Dem leader, Ed Davey, has said that Liz Truss should turn down the £115,000 that she's entitled to as a serving Prime Minister. Would you join that call, or do you think she deserves it after 44 days in office?
No, she should turn it down. I think that's the right thing to do. She's done 44 days in office. She's not really entitled to it. She should turn it down and not take it.
The reporting on this story can sometimes be a little misleading. Ex-Prime Ministers don't just get the 115k dumped into their accounts each year. What they can do is claim a refund of up to £115,000 per year for, quote, office and secretarial expenses. But that's only if those expenses arise from fulfilling public duties. And they have to provide the receipts. Now, it's of course pretty hard to imagine that Truss is going to have many of those kinds of public life expenses. After all, who's going to be inviting her to make inspirational speeches to school kids or give her views on the economy to university graduates? But Tories tend to be quite good at creative accounting, so I wouldn't put it past her. Another leaving gift for former prime ministers is the right to grant resignation honours. That usually means sticking their mates and backers in the House of Lords, which gives these unelected hangers-on political power and an attendance allowance for life. And Downing Street has confirmed that despite being in office for only 44 days, Liz Truss will get her chance to reward her cronies. This is pretty controversial, though, not only because she didn't serve very long, but because many of those moving to the Lords are likely to be the very people who encouraged her to crash the economy. Liberal Democrat Chief Whip Wendy Chamberlain wrote this to the Cabinet Office. Handing out more expensive gongs to Conservative allies would be a truly remarkable way to reward the shortest tenure as Prime Minister in British political history. Truss and her Conservative colleagues have trashed our economy and left millions in misery. We are faced with the horrifying prospect that those who are selected for honours will be the very people who helped plunge the country into chaos and crisis. Allowing Truss to dish out positions of influence and huge handouts to boot would be a disgraceful waste of taxpayer money and show a stunning lack of humility. Aaron, as I said, this story has been causing a lot of anger. £115,000 in allowances. She has done the job for a very short period of time and she's done it very, very badly. Should we be fuming about this?
Well, yes, but not just with Liz Truss. You know, it's important to say that Tony Blair took 100 grand out last year. Well, in 2021, this is a man who's worth 50 million pounds. So I don't quite understand why we're paying him 100 grand to run various personal campaigns either. But there you go. Former prime ministers tend to do pretty well between speaking gigs and consultancy and God knows what else. I feel it rather strange that the taxpayer is giving them 100 grand a year or up to 100 grand a year. Brown and Blair took 100 grand last year, as did Cameron. I find it strange that we're paying this to all these prime ministers after they've left office and they're extraordinarily wealthy. I find that very odd. It's quite a lot of cash, right? Especially if you've got 4 or 5 ex-prime ministers that are still alive. Or actually, it's more in our case. We've gone through 4 prime ministers since 2016. So the whole system seems rather strange to me. So yeah, of course Liz Truss shouldn't get this, but I don't think, nor should Tony Blair. The man's worth 50 million pounds. We shouldn't be giving him 100 grand a year to run various campaigns.
I think I would differ ever so slightly. What I would say about this, I mean, I agree with your point, given that we have these prime ministers who are making millions and millions of pounds, both in property and sort of advising international dictators. Those two things are completely inconsistent. I think what would make sense is you say, look, there is a danger that we have a revolving door between politics and business or politics and lobbying. So therefore, what we want to do is reduce the incentive to do that and say we will provide a public allowance for you to lead a reasonably comfortable life and take part in the public activities that it might be appropriate for an ex-prime minister to take part in. But that should be on the condition that you don't go around the world making millions of pounds lobbying for and providing consultancy to dictators. So I would imagine, I haven't done the research into this, but I imagine potentially Gordon Brown actually fits the mold. As far as I understand, he hasn't sort of sold himself out for millions of pounds with a property empire, but he does sort of intervene in public debate and do talks to various people that it's probably, reasonable to suggest it's in the public interest for him to do, and to say, look, we'll provide you this allowance so you don't have to sell yourself to the highest bidder, potentially makes sense. I 100% agree with you, though. If you've got a £50 million property empire, you shouldn't be getting this. But I'd actually go further and say no ex-prime minister should be allowed to get that. I think you should have some sort of law which says if you have worked in public office, then you don't now get to use the skills and contacts you gained in public office to go and sell all of that to the highest bidder.
There's also David Cameron to think about here, Michael, with the green seal stuff. And I get what you're saying in theory, but the reality is that the counter incentives from the private sector are just astronomical. 100 grand a year to pay for an office and a secretary and maybe a policy advisor is and a press person. It's not really, I don't really see it doing much. Bear in mind, Michael, the Prime Minister, I think, now is paid a wage of 150, 160 grand a year. I find it strange that all of their predecessors who are alive are being given 2/3 of that every year to just do whatever they think is appropriate. I find that a strange use of taxpayer money, personally. That said, I can see your point. If we're looking at all the fat that needs to be cut when it comes to Westminster, I think we could start with the House of Lords first, for sure.